Nope. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Harriman City Council meeting this evening for April 13th. Appreciate everybody being here. Especially want to recognize our friends from Camp Williams tonight who are going to be major participants, but we appreciate you guys being here and your service to our community and our country, so we appreciate that. We will get started tonight with, I'm excited about this. We're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance and ceremony by the Camp Williams Color Guard tonight. So turn the time to them.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we will now have an invocation by Colonel Day tonight.
Heavenly Father, we are grateful to be gathered together this evening. Grateful for all who are working to make our communities better. We're grateful for this great country that we live in. We ask for thy blessing upon our leaders. We ask for a blessing that our country and our leaders would be guided by thy Spirit. We also ask for peace in the world. Please bless those in the Ukraine. Please bless those who are suffering around the world. Father, we're grateful for all the blessings and the freedoms that we enjoy. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Colonel Day, and thank you to the Color Guard for being here tonight. We appreciate that. We are going to go on to item 4.2, City Council comments and recognitions. I think we just have one tonight. Is that correct? Anybody? You guys have anything before any other? I invited Addie Bruning here tonight. Addie, if you want to come forward to the podium here. You can bring your dad too. This one meant a little more to me tonight as I invited Addie to be here tonight. I've watched Addie, having cross-country runners myself that have ran against Addie. I've watched her compete since she was a freshman. She's at Harriman High tonight. She recently caught the attention of some newspaper and so now everybody's watching her. She just let me know she is signed with BYU for cross-country and track. So I just want to read a few of her accomplishments. Addie was just recognized as the cross-country Gatorade Player of the Year for Utah, which basically she's the top runner for the state of Utah. She's the Utah 6A state champion in cross-country, in the 3,200 and the 1,600. And I'll say that's not easy to do both. There's unique strategies to both of those events, so that's an amazing accomplishment. She's holder of the fastest known 5K time in the history of in-state girls cross-country. She's the state 6A record holder for the 3,200 meter. On top of that, she has a 3.997 GPA. She's an AP Scholar with distinction, an academic all-state winner for cross-country and track and field. As I mentioned, she's signed with BYU. She's a senior this year, so she'll be going there next year to run for BYU. And she's a recipient of both the athletic and academic scholarships from BYU. So again, we just want to recognize Addie as a student and applaud her for her accomplishments. So. And we'll come take a picture with you too, Addie. We're going to come down.
I can say that. Or if you want, I can figure it out.
Thank you again, Addie, and Ari, thanks for coming tonight. We'll move on to item 5 at this point, public comment. I'll just read this note on public comment. Audience members may bring any item to the City Council's attention. Comments will be limited to 2 minutes. State law prohibits council from acting on items that do not appear on the agenda. Public comments for this meeting will also be conducted electronically. Any person interested in addressing the council may submit a comment by emailing recorder@harriman.org or by visiting harriman.org/agendas and minutes, where there is a link to fill out an online public comment form. Your statement will be incorporated into the public record. So this time we'll open the floor to public comment. Seeing none, we will move on to item 6. City Council Board and Committee reports, if anybody on the council has any reports.
I was just at the Water Board meeting for Jordan Valley. Why I was late for here. Just kind of the same drum. We are very dry. We're in a very bad drought, so keep up with the good conservation standards and try hard to conserve wherever you can. And utilize the district's conservation garden and all their flip your strip and all their programs that allow you to be more water conscious in your yards. We are going through our budget process. We adopted a preliminary budget today. We pretty much kept pretty good pace with inflation, which is pretty ugly right now, about 10%. So everything we saw in our budget was almost harmonious with what we see as the inflation rate. So it is costing everyone everywhere. So we'll have to bump up taxes again this year at the water district to keep pace. Our water rates will go up here. I think in Harriman we were, I'm going to misquote, like 3.7%. I want to say a little over 3% increase in our wholesale rates to the district. So unfortunately, we'll feel this inflation everywhere we turn. So it's no different at the district, so that was cheery.
Thank you, Sherry.
So we had a couple committees meet over the last couple weeks. One was the HOV committee. So we're looking at off-road capabilities in our town and city area and proximity to our South Mountains. So we've just started looking at the study that we had accomplished over the last little bit and how that's going to help us and hinder us and what hurdles and what processes we need to put in place there. So we're looking at hopefully expanding trails and access to those trails with HOV and also biking and hiking and walking, trying to incorporate all those items. So the second committee was Healthy Harriman Committee. We met just the other day as well. We're gearing up for our Pedalpalooza that's on May 14th, which is bike safety. We have fire and police and a lot of community-centered events around that on that Saturday morning. It's always a fun event. We raffle off bikes, free bike helmets, lots of vendors come out, so it should be a fun event. And that's pretty much where that focus is. And then also May is Mental Health Month, so there'll be some more information coming out in May about mental health and awareness and safety. So, awesome.
Thank you, Teddy. Jared, do you have anything? Steve, do you have anything?
Just a couple quick comments from the Harriman Arts Committee. They just gratitude and congratulations to all those who went out and auditioned for and were cast in Cinderella. Thankful for Wendy for her mercenary efforts to enroll some other people. They made really awesome casting decisions, and all except for one. And just excited for that show to come in July. So everybody keep a lookout for that. From the Association of Municipal Councils, we had a meeting the other day. We had some visitors from Salt Lake County Senior Economic Development person, as well as Lou Kramer from the head of Colliers. Came and was talking to us about some interesting facts about the state of Utah that I thought I'd just share. Currently, Utah has, just with UPS, over 600 trucks a day going in Utah, just UPS trucks. And that the state of Utah has the highest percentage of commercial vehicles as a total percentage of traffic volume of any state in the country. Mostly it's because of I-15. All the traffic going up and down I-15, it's pretty much the only way north and south from Mexico to Canada. So it also was really interesting to talk about how Utah has, it's the #2 economy in the country, and it is the most diversified economy in the United States in terms of how many different sectors contribute substantially to our economy. Basically, Utah's a great place to be right now. We're in great shape. We're doing better than just about everybody else. So I thought that was really interesting stuff. They talked about how that ties into economic development, what commercial developers are looking for. I think there's some information I'll just share in some notes to the rest of the council and staff to kind of highlight some of the things they said. But there was a great message that came out of this that I think I just want to share. I think should be a guiding principle for a lot of us in all that we do, and that is collaborate, cooperate, and communicate. I think that's great guiding principles for solving problems and working things out, and I just thought that was a great way to say it. So those 3 C's, I hope we can all take those forward. As far as the Mosquito Abatement District, sure you'll understand this, what a loss this is for the district, but Cassie Draper is moving on. She has completed her degree and has received a great job offer with substantially more money than the Mosquito District can pay her. So she's going to be working about 10 hours a day or 10 hours a week for the district, but has taken another full-time job. It's a huge loss. It's one of the things that's difficult about municipal government is there's so much knowledge and experience that gets tied up with individuals serving in certain roles. And when somebody with a lot of senior experience moves on, it leaves a hole. And so we're going to miss her, but we're doing our best to carry on. Just as a reminder, I talked about this last time,
There are forecasts that this year will be a pretty high year for West Nile, at least that's what they're predicting. So as you're going around your yards doing spring cleanup, any flower pots or old pools or anything that are collecting standing water, make sure you dump those out. You don't want areas of standing water that could be mosquito breeding places. So that's it.
Appreciate it, Steve. Couple things I failed to mention in 4.2, and I'm sorry, I need to do it here. I want to recognize, one, our HR department for their banquet, for their employee recognition banquet, which I thought was a great event a couple weeks ago that they moved out to the RSL facility. And I appreciated the change in venue and the way they recognized, so thank you to our HR department. Also to the Harriman Orchestra for their concert for the children, they called it, which I was just, my little guy loved it. I thought it was a great night, so we appreciate them, and all of them are volunteers. There's probably 30 of them in that orchestra that volunteer their time, and so we appreciate that. The only committee I've been a part of the past 3 weeks was COM, and basically it was just, they created a subcommittee to attack the location for a homeless overflow. So they kind of pulled the cities together that probably will be affected by that decision, and they're going to create a little committee. Rather than 18 of us trying to come up with a decision, they just created a smaller committee of 6 or 7, I think, cities that are going to kind of create the vision and then come back to report to the rest of COM on that. But that was it for COM, because that's been the focus, and that's what we've been tasked with, is finding that location for that overflow shelter. So, okay, see no other reports. We'll move on to item 7.1, Camp Williams update by Brigadier General Joseph Green, Lieutenant Colonel Shane Day, and Paul Raymond. Turn the time to you guys.
Mr. Mayor, council members, thanks for having us here. Harriman has been such great partners to us over the years, and that's really important for the National Guard because we're the original community-based Kickstarter program. We started in 1635 with the Massachusetts Bay Colony Charter that said all the able-bodied men had to bring their muskets and be part of the militia. And since then, the National Guard has been doing that in every community throughout our nation's history. But we can't operate without our partners. You know, and in 1776 at Concord and Lexington, it was the men and women contributing food and bullets to the militia members. Now it's a little bit different. Our partnership today consists of trying to, especially here around Camp Williams, protect the training area for the men and women who train at Camp Williams. So we wanted to talk a little bit about the compatible use buffer program that we have with our partners. But to give it some context, our earliest and most distinguished unit in Utah actually started in a different state. It started in Nauvoo. It was part of the Nauvoo Legion, and then part of the pioneers that came across the plains in '47, and then became the Utah Militia and then the Utah National Guard. But it's an artillery unit, and their main training area is Camp Williams. And up through the late 90s, if you remember, we were focused on the Cold War, and artillery was one of the biggest and most important functions in the military at that time. But then after 9/11, something happened, and our country shifted to counterterrorism. And in the counterterrorism fight, the artillery played a reduced role. And so we didn't train as much on the artillery at Camp Williams as we had in the 70s and 80s. But something just happened recently. Our country withdrew from Afghanistan and Iraq deliberately because what had happened over the 25 years we were in Iraq and Afghanistan was that the Russians and Chinese had invested a lot of technology money and resources into creating an overmatch with us in technology. So where our M1A1 Abrams tank used to outgun the Russian tank by 2 to 1, suddenly the Russians now had a tank that could shoot further and better than ours, and better artillery. The Chinese had created drone aircraft that could fly faster than us. And so our country desperately needed to withdraw from spending our resources in the Middle East to create that technology modernization into upgrading all our systems so that we could catch up to Russia and China. And a lot of analysts think that's why Putin chose to act when he did was because he saw the window closing on him when we would catch up and threaten his ability to act again. And so in this new paradigm, in this shift to large-scale contingency operations, now the artillery is more important to our nation's security than it had been under a counterterrorism framework. So you will see the artillery firing a lot more at Camp Williams. Their range is increasing, the cannons are changing, and so we're getting new cannons, and they will shoot higher and farther and all those kinds of things. So we will increase our reps and sets there as we train our men and women to go to Eastern Europe and defend NATO countries. But all of that comes, as the National Guard always has done, in coordination with our community. And so that means our neighbors to the south and north and east and west of Camp Williams, and trying to figure out a compatible way to allow our men and women to train and to be good neighbors at the same time. So I've asked Paul and Shane to kind of walk us through the program a little bit.
Mayor, City Council, thanks for letting us come today. So General Green has talked a little bit about the big picture of what we're facing as far as the armed forces. I want to shrink that down a little bit, talk a little bit about the Utah National Guard and particularly Camp Williams, our function in that. What do we do to make sure we can accomplish that bigger mission? Camp Williams, again, as he mentioned, started off as an artillery training area and still is an artillery training area. And outside of Fort Sill, which is the home of the field artillery, Camp Williams, our regional training institute there, trains more artillerymen than anywhere else in the country outside of Fort Sill. So we have thousands of students coming into Camp Williams every year to train in field artillery, not just in that, but in some other functions that we have, warfighting functions as well. But Camp Williams has become quite widely known, and we have several exercises every year where we have multi-state, multinational exercises here on Camp Williams, focusing on some of those key functions that we have in the United States military. And in those, we took gathered some statistics from the training that we did just this last year, and training man days counted up to more than 240,000 training man days of people coming to Camp Williams from all over the country and training on the ranges that we have, training at the garrison Camp Williams. And munitions, as we look at that, for anything from 9mm up to 155 millimeter howitzers, 1.73 million munitions just last year. So there's a lot going on at Camp Williams all the time. We're busy all the time hosting all kinds of different training. And again, we're focused on trying to gain this overmatch back with some of our adversaries. And Camp Williams is kind of key in that function, not just to Utah. And one thing that I like to mention also is that the Utah National Guard is made up of our communities. And really that's what makes us stronger, is made up of people from your community and from all the communities around the state of Utah that come together at Camp Williams to do this training. So we're limited on space, limited on time when we can do that training. But Camp Williams is kind of the center of all of that. I've been tasked by the Adjutant General to facilitate these commanders training. And so we're trying to do everything that we can to make sure that they have the resources, the space, and the time to be able to accomplish that training. Paul's going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we can do. And again, we want to be good neighbors. We value communities. We are the communities. The communities are us. But we have resources, opportunities that we can utilize to make that. And as we're getting closer and closer in that military and civilian interface all around Camp Williams, what can we do to make that easier? From our side looking out, from the outside looking in. So again, so we can accomplish that mission that we have in training our soldiers, not just of the Utah Guard, but the Army. But Paul's going to share a little bit about those programs that we have that we can work with our civilian counterparts in making sure that we can do that.
Mayor Palmer, council, and city officials, I'm just really grateful to be here to address you. I've been here before, and it's never easier. I'm glad there's not a bigger crowd because I just love speaking, I'm telling you. So, I just want to draw attention to this slide. When we started talking about building partnerships and stuff around Camp Williams, this is really what it came down to, is trying to take care of the wildlife, take care of some open space and recreational opportunities, and also continue the military mission at Camp Williams. And it all really started in 2012 with a joint land use study. And in starting this up, we had a lot of challenges. We had to find partners in this. We had to identify parcels of land that we wanted to include, which ones we wanted to exclude, and other things. And so in working through these challenges, we got set up with the Department of the Army with a program called ACUB, which is the Army Compatible Use Buffer. And that's where we started. And it gave us federal funds that we could help buy properties, key parcels of property to help protect the training. And Harriman City is joined us at that time as one of our cooperative agreement holders. You are the only city in the entire country that is a cooperative agreement holder in an ACUB program, which is it's really unique and it's really special, and we're really proud of that relationship that we were able to forge with you guys. And I've really enjoyed working with all the city employees you've had over the years and different officials, different mayors, and you guys have just always been awesome. You've always stepped up to the challenge to be our partner. There's been times when there was areas of concern for the city in zoning issues, and you were able to, ask us to come help you and testify basically first on some matters that benefited the city. And so it's been a really good thing. So the ACUB has evolved. Now we went to the state. We have a state, what's called a Sentinel landscape. And there we go. A Sentinel landscape, and I've got a definition of it here for you. But it's basically that land that stands guard around our training mission is what it comes down to. It's a little more complicated than that, but to simplify it, it's those working lands around in Harriman and in Saratoga, Eagle Mountain, Cedar Fort, all the cities that surround Camp Williams. And so it was important enough for the state to try and protect this training mission and train other things along that they designated this area, and I've got a map here that I'll show you. And so if I'm being redundant, and some of you have probably seen these things before, this is the House bill that designated it, but it has basically 3 objectives there, along with that language, and you can look through those. But it's important to the federal government, it's important to the state, and so this is the area that was designated as the West Traverse Sentinel landscape. And you can see that takes in a lot of space. It's not based solely on the military mission, but it takes into account things like wildlife habitat, wildland fire, habitat development for different species, and deer migration areas as well that come out of the Ochre Mountains and pass through Camp Williams and go through Eagle Mountain and down along the Jordan River. And so there's a lot to this. This exact same area has been designated as a regional conservation program. And so the NRCS has given us a lot of extra money to buy easements in this area and also to improve habitat and do other things in this area. Part of the Sentinel landscape is we got a budget from the state, And that state budget recently allowed us to buy 2 parcels of property in Harriman that I believe can be used for trailheads for recreation areas in the future. They were outside of our ACUB area. We couldn't use any federal dollars, but the Sentinel landscape gives us the ability to use those funds to work in the community to achieve other ends. And so it's a really important program. Here's just some figures on what Camp Williams really contributes to the community. And I think all of you can see that on your monitors, can't you? I hate to just read slides, so, but it's got, this is what we're working towards. We want to, there's a number of reasons why Camp Williams needs to stay open, and the training not diminished in any form, but it adds a lot to the community. The other thing I want to highlight is when it came time to select parcels, it didn't happen randomly. Everything we did was based on studies that were conducted, on actual monitors that were set out while we were shooting artillery and shooting at our live fire ranges and things along those lines. I'll give you an example of Camp Ripley in Minnesota. They went 3 miles out from their boundary of their facility, 3 miles, and they drew a line around it, and that was their buffer zone. And they basically shut down any development 3 miles within Camp Ripley. That's happened quite a bit. We did not take that approach. We took a very selected approach that was supported by the documents that we got. Like right here, this is the noise and impulse map, and those blue lines around there show where the sound really gets off Camp Williams from our training. The area, I want to, in the upper right portion there by where it says 68, in that area right there is where Harriman asked us to go along the west side of Redwood Road. There were some developers that wanted to put residential housing in there. And based on everything that we had, we came in, they talked to them, and they didn't change the zoning in that area. And I know the developers were really mad. I know the developers, and they went across Redwood Road, and now they're developing in Bluffdale. But all these lines, you'll see when I show you the ACUB map, how they fit together. Here's one that shows the airspace and the ingress and egress areas for the aircraft at Camp Williams. Another thing with this is this airspace that goes around Camp Williams. You can't fly any drones in this area. And so like any residential areas or anything in that, they can't fly any aircraft. We own that airspace. And so it's, to do it's a significant process to get that accomplished. There's a way to do it if someone asks for it. They have some policies to allow it, but for a residential person just to fly them, it's not allowed. This map here shows the different areas. One's a half-mile buffer around, the other's is further a half-mile out. But the blue lines represent areas where development should really be restricted to a compatible use. And the other area, it's more lenient as to things that would or wouldn't affect military training. So this is our current map of what we've accomplished. Everything in the dark green are parcels that we've purchased. Through ACUB, initially we had 11,228 acres that were eligible for purchase, and we've purchased just under 3,000 acres right now. You can see a lot of them on the south, a lot of them on the north. Everything that has a color on that map has been officially designated as an area to receive federal funds for buffering purposes. And if you look at the other maps and the impulse and the noise maps and everything else, this fits those maps. And this map was put together in conjunction with different communities and with members of the military and studies that were done. So that's how we arrived at those parcels. That's why we didn't draw a 1 mile or a 2 or a 3 mile ring around Camp Williams. We knew there was a lot of development. There's a lot of things going on in the space, and we wanted to be a good partner and only try and protect those key areas that really supported our training mission. And if we can turn all those areas green, we can train at Camp Williams indefinitely. Everything that we do, we can keep doing, or it's not going to be affected. They may come out with new weapon systems, but those are things that we would probably have to deal with more on our end. But anyways, do you guys have any questions about any of that?
No, I snapped a bunch of pictures of it, though. Thanks for sharing.
What's that?
I snapped a bunch of pictures of it. Thanks for sharing those slides.
So, there's no
Paul, we appreciate you guys being here. And I will also say thank you for the time you spent taking us around. That was, for myself, I had no idea the operation and the scope and, kind of that was so just beneficial as an elected official to understand what goes on out there. And so we appreciate that.
Well, you're welcome. And I don't think you guys are such a valued member of everything that we do. Right now, we've got $1.5 million for Harriman City, and we've got $1.5 million in state funds to match with it and go by property. Any of the properties in Harriman, we have the ability to go purchase at market prices, like any of them. We can't do it overnight, but we can do it over a period of time, and we can work with landowners, and we can, in almost all cases, there's a way that we can work with landowners so they can receive their full value. Some of the parcels on the south side, the landowners didn't want to sell it, and so they sold us an easement, and then they kind of cut out a 5-acre piece where they wanted to build their home, which is fine. And so we've got a home there, and then they've got 300 acres around them that can never be developed. And so it worked out great for them because they got paid 90% of the value of their property right up front, and they get to keep the property. And so at the present time, open space, they may think that if it's got an easement, the value is gone. The value is definitely not gone. There's a lot of people willing to pay top dollar for open space. And open space is a commodity that's becoming rarer and rarer in this area. And so along with the protecting the military mission, protecting all that open space that we have is really significant. Getting good deer habitat planted up around Camp Williams again that will help draw the deer out of the city of Harriman. And you won't have to have your ninja hunters out there slaying them in the winter and pushing wheelbarrows around and doing stuff like that. But if we can get some water sources and some other things up on camp, kind of bring the deer herd back up out of your city, I think it would really help as well. So, but we're in it for whatever works for everyone, and we want to be your partner in anything you're doing. So anyways, thank you.
Appreciate it, Paul. Thank you all for being here.
I just have a quick comment. I think it's Colonel Day, right? You made a comment about how a lot of the Guard is our community members. So thank you for bringing one of our best community members here with you today. She officiated, or whatever you call it, in the color guard, JT. She's one of our great Harriman residents, and we really appreciate her. She is awesome. Thanks for being here.
If I could just ask one question, and I'm not sure, Paul or Colonel Day, which of you would probably be best to answer this, but when you talk about these buffer zones, they're described as compatible use zones. So it's not a matter of prohibiting all use or creating this just empty space buffer. Could you just speak so that, on public record, what are some of the compatible uses that you do see being good ideas there, things that you're supporting the development of?
So as an example, in Saratoga Springs, last time I was here, I was talking to you guys about buying some property in Saratoga Springs. So some of that property that's compatible, they're putting a cemetery on it. So there's cemeteries, recreational uses, industrial type things where we're not going to get many complaints. those types of items are all compatible. And I know the city's come up with a lot of ideas. I know they've done studies up here on South Mountain for various things, and the majority of them are all compatible. The one thing that is really not compatible is the residential, because in a small area and you put a large number of homes, and you can educate them and say, the military's still active and everything else, but those complaints help diminish training. And any time that we change the timing, the amount of time we spend on training, it diminishes the training skills of soldiers that are going to go to war. And it's just inherently just a bad idea to get into that business. But I think there's a lot of things the city can do in those areas. A lot of it, like putting trailheads, putting bike trails, putting equestrian parks. I know one thing that we want to do is do more wildland fire mitigation in those areas as well, because we do it on our side of the fence. But if you look, the grass will be this tall on your side, and it's like this tall on our side. But if we can do more mitigation on your side of the fence, it will really minimize the chance that any fire, no matter where it starts, gets off of camp or comes onto camp and creates some kind of damage. So there's a lot of things. And any ideas that the city has that they would like to do with any of those areas or something, we'd be happy to hear them. And I believe all it takes is an agreement between the city and the National Guard as to what those compatible uses are that would allow you to do that according to the deed restrictions that are placed on those parcels. So it doesn't.
I would ask one more specific question, and I think it's relevant to ongoing discussions we have. And that is in regards to the current zoning that the city has identified for a lot of the parcels that aren't already ACOV lands that are adjacent,
Yeah.
is what we call a forestry recreation zone.
Yep.
That would allow some residential housing with minimum 2.5 acre lots. So it would be a limited number of housing, but would all residential just be completely incompatible, or would forestry recreation, I don't want to give a definition, but we might call it log cabin type homes, those types of things. Is that incompatible?
So it's just a matter of density, really. And, in some areas where they're spread out, or maybe they're on the backside of a ridge to where they're not sitting right on the ridge looking down on our training mission and things of that nature. And if they're out of the ACUB area, then it's not a problem. You can put whatever density you want on them, and we feel it wouldn't affect us. But a limited amount is definitely better than a larger amount. And I was part of the Salt Lake County West Bench planning, and I know Salt Lake County has Harriman, all these hills up here is the same as forest and was it agriculture and recreation type things as part of their plan as well. So it's definitely less homes means less complaints, and less complaints means the training mission stays at its current level. So that's what we're trying to achieve. So
We appreciate the input. Thank you, Paul.
thanks.
Thank you again for being here. We appreciate the partnership and the relationship. We appreciate you guys taking the time to come tonight. Okay, we'll move on to item 7.2, presentation of the Harriman City fiscal year 2022-2023 tentative budget and 2023-2024. You guys don't feel like you have to stay. This gets really...
I was going to tell them don't run out so fast.
Thank you, everybody. Pause. I think you're good, Alan. Yep, I think you're good.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. We want to talk about the introduction to our budget for this year and next year, and an amendment of the current year. It's kind of, we're looking at 3 years all at one time right here. And initially, I'd just like to mention the calendar that we're looking at. We'll give you the beginning tentative numbers tonight. We'll have 2 meetings coming up where the council needs to approve the budget or approve what you agree on the budget by the May 8th meeting, I believe it is, the first meeting in May. You can still change it after that. The second meeting in May will be our public hearing on the budget, but we are required to approve the budget no later than June 20th. So our last meeting before June 20th is the first meeting in June. So if we approve it by first meeting in May, public hearing second meeting in May, then you have up till the 20th of June to approve it, or to adopt it as our final budget. So that's the time frame that we're looking at. Any time before you adopt it, you can propose and by council vote change anything in it, even after you approve it. After you adopt it, then it requires a budget amendment, okay? So, couple things that as we start here, we're approaching this differently this week, or this year, than we have in past years. In the past years, we've come to you the first meeting in April, and we've given you the book, and then we've asked you for any questions. Now, I've heard over the year that some of you don't think that's the most appropriate, so I propose that we now look at the numbers first, and over the course of the next 4 weeks, we'll look at whatever you think we need to look at in the numbers. And then in the meantime, we will be working on the book and have the book prepared no later than the first meeting in May, so that once you adopt it, or once you approve it, it goes to the public. So, okay? So we'll be working kind of simultaneously with you so that when we get to the end, we've got what you want as the numbers, and we've got the document ready to go to the public. So we're approaching it differently. Now, as I said, we're looking at an amendment to the current year, so we're looking at changes that have happened during the year that we need to amend for this year. Then we're looking at a budget for the coming 2 years. So to start with, I want to look at and this is tentative budget that's proposed by management at this point, but we're looking for your input going forward. So just an overview of our general fund, and I'm mainly going to be looking at the general fund in this first section. But our revenue for 2022 is projected to end the year at $29,510,000. Our revenue for 2023 is going to end at $29,128,000. Now, you wouldn't expect it to go down right now, but it's going down because by the end of 2022 fiscal year, we will be receiving back from the fire district $1.7 million, okay? And in government accounting, that's revenue when it comes from a different agency. So without that, we would be, and we would also get another $650,000 in 2023 from the fire, which would pay them up what we paid out for them to start the district. So we'll be paid back by the fire district early in next year. Oh, I should mention too, I gave each one of you a flash drive. I gave Jared
We were wondering if somebody left a virus
Okay.
flash drive up here for us.
Okay, I gave Jared a printed one because I knew he would want it. Now, if any of you also want a printed one, I can have one before the meeting's over, so.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
I just knew that that would be expected, so we
I
will
don't know what to
by,
do with that other thing.
yeah,
That's probably true. What is it?
we will by sometime in 2023, have the fire department completely paid back. So, you know, that's part of the reason why those are lower. And you'll see that between 2023 and 2024, our fund balance doesn't change, because that's been kind of the policy we've had over the years, is we keep those the same year to year. Now, in keeping them the same year to year, they'll go down a little bit. Now, we haven't followed that policy in the last couple of years because of the fire district, but we're back on that tack. So, but when we have 30 million versus 29 million, the percentage goes down even if the amount stays the same. So, and in the last year, we've been working on a 10-year plan, looking out and looking at what's out there. And part of that plan is to think about what we really want that fund balance to be. Where do we want that to land? Now, as of this last year, it can be 35%. Prior to a year ago, it could be no more than 25%. Okay? There's been a lot of discussion in our management about how far we want to take that, you know. We've tried for years to stay right in that range of 25%, and, you know, that's been okay for us. The more we go up, the less other things that we can do. Now, as I talk about the 10-year plan, the other thing that we've been looking at is how can we maintain services and still get the most we can in our capital projects. So hand in hand, and you'll see part of this as we go through tonight, is that when we calculate the general fund, generally what we end up doing is whatever is over and above the previous fund balance, we put it in capital projects, okay? So now we've gone through a 10-year estimate, which, you know, you get out 4 or 5 years, you're really guessing a lot, but we've taken that number and said, okay, engineering, you'll have this much money each year for capital projects. And they've gone through now, and based on those numbers, have put together a capital improvement plan. Now, we know that we've still got work to do on that, but we've got a pretty substantial start on it, and we'll be looking at that today. So anyhow, when you look at our general fund, is staying pretty consistent. And as was mentioned, prices are going up everywhere. We're projecting almost a 3% increase in revenue. But without our transfers out to capital projects and the public works building, we're only going up about 2.5% in our expenses. So we've maintained in this budget expenditures. I think we have a pretty conservative estimate of revenue. Some would say I've got it too conservative, but you know, the problem is if we estimate revenue too high and we go out and spend it and then we don't get that, then you've got a substantial problem. So that's where we're at. So now in this budget, we are projecting for both years a 4% market or raise for employees, but there are some market adjustments, as Travis showed us when he came and talked last month. Particularly our outside people are out of range. We've seen that our IT people right now are out of range, but mostly it's our outside people that are getting some kind of a bump. Now in this budget, if they got a bump for market adjustment, they didn't get the full 4% either. We do the market adjustment and then a smaller raise amount. And unusual to our industry, or I think most industries, we've got hard quotes at this point that our health insurance is not going up this year. In fact, it's likely to go down about 2%. Okay, I've never seen that happen in years and years, okay? So we are projecting no increase in employee benefits this year, okay? Then we've got some projected additional people. Now, we've got the deputy city attorney, the legal assistant, the judge, and the court clerk, who you've already approved and authorized those to be hired, and those are in the process. In this budget, we're also proposing one HR tech, which would take our HR staff to 4. An accountant would bring our accounting staff to 5. A parks tech, a public works inspector, and a building inspector. Okay? Those are our employees that are being projected in this budget. Okay? We're proposing a few vehicles in this budget, and there's a pretty substantial change in our vehicles this year. In past years, we have budgeted and used vehicle leasing for all of our vehicles. In this budget, we are only proposing budgeting leases for the large dollar items, like the 2 dump trucks in this budget, which are $270,000 apiece. We would lease them over a 5-year period, but all of the passenger vehicles will just be would be paid out as part of the budget, and we would not finance them. So you see that we've got two dump trucks and 3 passenger vehicles that are scheduled for our general fund. Now, separately, police, I believe, are projecting 16 new vehicles this year and 14 next year. Now, those all come out of their funds separately from the police department. These are some of the, and we'll show you this in a minute, but when you look at your spreadsheets, you'll see things identifying some of these major things. We are working right now with a product that will do, our work orders went live on Monday. We're doing electronic time cards starting next Monday. We're starting in a month on our electronic version of our building permits. They're all done with a portal to the public where people can get on and do all of that work live. Well, the next step on that, and this shows in our first 2 items here, we're working on a artificial intelligence software that goes along with it. And this would be something that someone could call in whatever hours, 24 hours a day, say, I want to pay my water bill. And they would be able to access that directly over the portal and pay their water bill. Or they could call in and I want to open a water account. They could do that completely online and 24 hours a day. We're working on that process. And so it's just the next step. We've taken over the last 2 years and made a product that our contractors and our residents will be able to completely contact over our web portal, but now it will take it to where they won't always need a person to be there to answer the question. And so we're working on that. We have an Everbridge and a translation software in our, and you'll notice as we go through this, one of the things that's becoming very common in our requests is new software. And it's cloud-based software, and it's things that we haven't been able to do in the past. But we're working on a translation software that we're kind of required to have for our website. And so we are in the process of working with that. It's been 7 years since we put our digital signs out on the entrance to the city, and there's a proposal this year in communications to replace both of the signs at the entrance to the city. We're having some pixelation problems there and so forth. In our recorder's office, we see PrimeGov software. Now, This is a replacement software. I've put it in there as a major thing, but it is taking the place of Granicus. So Granicus is coming out, PrimeGov is coming in. So that's our software for our agendas and our packets and so forth. We've been using Granicus. It's been kind of not user-friendly. PrimeGov is a Word-based program, so it makes it far easier for us to use, so we're going to that. Also in 2024, we've got an election. And where our last election cost us about $50,000, the county is now telling us that the next one's going to be about $108,000. Okay, so you'll see that as a major increase in the recorder's office in 2024. Finance is proposing a budget software for 23 and 24 that will be a software that will be able to track requests for budgets, whether it's from you or someone else, where we watch where it comes and goes. It'll also be a presentation software where we can tie to you the budget and how it's reflecting and how it's being paid. So we haven't picked that exact software yet, but we are looking at that. If it's approved, we would be wanting to do that. IT is requesting about $50,000 to replace all of our servers and switches. These are typically recommended to be changed out every 3 to 4 years. By the end of this budget cycle, we'll be almost 7 years on our servers and switches. We've had very good success with them. We have not had much downtime. In all the time we've been in this building, we've been down a total of 3 times, and 2 of those times were off hours. So, we haven't had a problem yet, but we're running to the end of the cycle of the machines. Facilities is requesting a scissor lift. This is due to the fact that they have a lot of areas in this building they can't get to. This is one that's small enough that can go on the elevator and can go 24 feet high. So it can move around the building fairly easily and so forth. I would also like to mention, and I put this down, it's not really a major addition, but crack seal and chip seal. We started about 6 or 7 years ago putting $500,000 a year into road maintenance, into the chip seal and crack seals. About 3 years ago, we went up to $700,000. Last year, we went up to $970,000. This year, they're budgeting to go to $1,240,000, and next year to a little over $1.5 million. Okay, so those are built into this budget. Okay, and the last item here is that our GIS needs some major upgrading to help us go to the next level. And so you'll see in the GIS section about $54,000 for consulting with the Esri people to come in and help us get to the next level of our GIS system. Okay, so that's our main things we've got coming up this year. There's a few more you'll see there. A few things to just make note of. There's quite a bit more training cost in our outside employees this year because under new state law, or not state law, federal law, they have to have a CDL that comes after going to a complete class. And it's around $3,000 a piece to go through that. So, they're looking at what we'll have to do to accomplish getting our people through the training. And so a lot of ideas there, maybe getting someone ourselves trained to teach the class or something like that. But that's one of the big things that we've seen. Also in your spreadsheets, as you look through it, we have created some separate line items that you haven't seen before. Vehicle purchases is separated from the vehicle leases. Computers are separated out of capital expenditures. and software is denoted separately. All of those things have been hitting our capital outlay line for years, and in finance, we have to manually take those out at the end of the year because they don't qualify. So, we're trying to clean things up a little bit, make that, many businesses will capitalize items at $100. At the city, our rate is $5,000. Anything under $5,000 doesn't get capitalized, so a computer never qualifies. Software really doesn't qualify. It's not a purchase. We're just paying a service fee. So we're backing those out. We're separating the vehicle lease from the vehicle purchases, so it's a little more obvious to see. So, okay. Hit the wrong button there. Okay. 2024, there's some additional employees requested. We have an IT tech. This would make 4 in our IT staff right now. 3 street technicians. The arborist. We have an arborist, but we're proposing in this budget an assistant arborist. And then engineering is looking for another staff engineer in 2024. So that's, then 2024, we have a few more vehicles, a few more of the high dollar ones. We've got, we've got the hook lift, which is the only one we propose to have financed out of this group. And we've got 6 more vehicles. The fleet one would be a replacement and be for our parts chaser. But these are all replacement vehicles. Now, depending on what's decided in our budget, there will be several vehicles that will be sold in the coming year, and we need to we'll be looking to see if we can't come up with a number for that we can't plug in here, but we don't have it at this point. So, and when we talk about the vehicles too, one of the things we need to keep in mind is we can't just go out and buy vehicles, okay? The vehicles that we ordered for the 2022 year, we haven't even gotten half of them yet, okay? So we may have to slide some of these budgets from year to year to make up for that. We're being pushed down the road a little more all the time. And a month ago, we thought several of these from last year's budget would be here by the end of this fiscal year. They're starting to look like they're not going to be. And we're seeing that both from the city and from what the police have ordered, and we're seeing just getting pushed out and pushed out and pushed out, and so as we go forward, one of the things we're going to have to be a little flexible on is pushing these down the road and moving the budget as we need to. As we've been waiting all year for these that we're waiting for now, and it's been just a little over a month ago I was told that they would be shipped on April 30th, and now we're being told maybe not this fiscal year, and so it's becoming a big problem, and it's going to, I think for a while be that problem. Okay. John, could you bring up the first spreadsheet? Now, going this tact actually fits me better because I'm better about talking about numbers than putting words into it. So anyhow, okay. Yes. Okay. Now, You'll see this when you go into your thumb drive or on the pages. You'll see a 19, 20, and 21, and this is our year-ending actual numbers, okay? And the next column you're going to see is what we've done this fiscal year so far. Now, the general fund is actually through yesterday, but I didn't get the other ones quite updated quite to that far. They're up through February 24th. Okay, then you're going to see the budget you already approved for 2022. Okay, then you'll see proposed changes in that budget that would change the original budget. These will effectively be an amendment. And then you'll see the 2023 budget. Okay, we then show a percentage change between the revised 2022 budget and the 2023 budget. So you can see how much things are changing. Then you'll see the 2024 budget with a change of what it's changing between 2024 and 2023. So you'll see as you go through this how these three budgets are interchanging or how they follow through these numbers. Go down just a little farther. Go down to legal. Okay, further. Okay, right there. Scroll over to the right.
Here comes the trouble.
Could you scroll over to the right a little bit on that, Jonathan? Okay, now, the changes I've just talked to you about in the PowerPoint, I've highlighted in our general fund here what they are. So you can see that we're going up in budget in legal because we've got a deputy city attorney and a legal assistant. If you go down, I've highlighted that we've got some computers in this budget, and that's primarily for the two new people. If you go down a few more lines there, you see replaced by deputy city attorney. One of the things that we're doing with the deputy city attorney is doing away with our prosecutor. That will now be that person. So now you'll see in 2023 and 2024, we don't have any cost in the prosecutor. So we've gone clear through primarily the budget or the general fund, and we've shown the major changes that we're going to see this year and in 2024. We've highlighted those to the side. So I think we've picked out all the big things. So as you go through it, I think that'll be a key thing for you to look at is how the budget has changed based on some of those things we just talked about, okay? Now, like I said, we've got 4 weeks till we actually have to approve the budget. So if there's anything that anyone wants to go through specifically, let me know and we'll prepare a presentation for them or an explanation. So we've gone through, as I mentioned, because of some of the transfers happening this year, we've actually got $4.5 million this year if we finish as the budget states to transfer to capital projects. It's a little more than we've had in a while. Now, part of that's because we got the fire money back, but not all of it. So, and each of the next 2 years, we're sitting around $3.5 million that we can transfer. So even though we're showing a fairly conservative revenue, we're still growing in the amount we can send to capital projects. Now, the next spreadsheet, Jonathan. Now, just so you know, all of our funds are in that spreadsheet. Go tab by tab. You can see every one of them across the bottom. And you can, okay, this is the other one. Now, go back to the general fund one here. Okay, I talked to you about the capital improvements plan that our engineers and others have been working on. And as you look at this, they've gone through and they have picked all of what they think are our capital projects. Now, you see the ones highlighted in gray. That's reimbursement agreements. We're including our reimbursement agreements in here so that we can get them all on a priority list. Now, we do know there's a little bit of work still to do on the reimbursement agreements, and we'll be working on those. But in going through this, they put a priority list on each of these projects. Now, you see the ones highlighted as 2022, 23, and 24. Those are what right now are in the budget in our capital projects. Now, you can prioritize them. If you think something else should be higher or lower, you can tell us what that is. Now, the caveat to that is if something goes in, something has to come out, okay? We're budgeting what we think is going to be there, so we need to, if we reprioritize, it means something comes out, okay? And that's really the case everywhere.
What is pink, sorry? What is the?
Pink. Okay. Now, you see that top pink one there? That's the one Bryce was talking about in the first meeting. And we do have it scheduled in here the way that he proposed doing it. So that 126,000 for this year, just for the next month or two, and then the balance in next year. So that is the one that he actually talked to you about last meeting. So anyhow, we have gone through on the budget. The budget uses the 22, 23, and 24 that they have here. So we can adjust that and change it to priorities that you have. But we've done that for each one of these. We've got the general fund, which are regular capital projects. We've got transportation, water, stormwater, impact fees, and park impact fees. Then we've got our water enterprise, and we've got our stormwater enterprise. So we've got all of them in here. And then we also have one tab for our ARPA and grants. So that's money, the things that we're going to pay with the grants, things that we're going to pay with the ARPA money. So, what's that?
This is really nice.
Okay, they've worked hard on it, I tell you. But if you look down at the bottom of this, go clear to the bottom of the sheet. Okay, right here, you'll see that I gave them a number of what they should be able to expect in money to spend on capital projects during the year. So that calculation at the bottom is showing what my finance target was versus what they've chosen in projects. So you see with this one, they've got a little left over in 2022, but they're breaking almost even on the other 2 years. So they've taken the targets that we provided from our 10-year plan. Now they're putting together a plan for the capital projects to show how they fit with what we came up with in our targets. So so most of the rest of the budget that you're looking at, besides the general fund, is going to look at these targets. And they're going to take what we're budgeting as revenue and using this to come up with the target to the projects that they can fit within our project. So part of the thing on this one too, the reason they're over a little bit in 2022 is one of the items we're showing in 2022 is that we're going to buy a Game Point piece of property. So there's $1.7 million in that number. So, if that were to change, then this changes what we do with this and we come back with additional things. So, essentially as you go through our funds for park impact, stormwater impact, road impact for our general capital projects, that's going to all be coming from this capital improvement plan based on what we've estimated our revenue to be. Okay, so like I say, you guys can change that as you feel like you need to. One thing I would also tell you, though, is you will see the fire district page in here, and we're presenting that to you the way we think it'll be, but we cannot approve that till after a truth and taxation in August. So when we approve this, we'll be approving everything but the fire district. Now, where we're dropping our fee, we don't have to have a truth and taxation for that. So we can go ahead and do ours, but when we raise theirs, we have to have the truth and taxation, then approve the budget. So that's what I have for you tonight, and if you have any questions.
One, I want to thank Alan and the engineering staff. Everybody who's involved with this CIP have done a huge amount of work. You'll also notice we have our reimbursement agreements in there. That was something we wanted to make sure that we are capturing things we've agreed to pay. But this is, because we didn't have one, this was a tremendous lift this year. I hope it will be easier in future years, and I'm sure Justin and Blake and Jonathan and all the engineering staff hope so as well. But this, as Alan said, this gives us a plan. Those things can change, but at least we're working towards things. So if you see projects in there, you will see some of the big projects we've talked about there are listed in there. And then you will go down and see every once in a while reimbursements. Some of those are in 1 year, and some of those are spread out over several years as we looked at them. So just want to point out, thank you, Alan. I know Alan has done a ton of work on this.
I echo that. Thank you, everybody, for, this is
Great.
fantastic. So appreciate it, Alan. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody that's participated in this.
Thank you for my paper. I've made several notes already.
And like I say, if someone else wants a printed one, let me know. I'll get it for you before we're done.
Thanks, Alan.
I'll take one. I would like one, actually.
Okay?
Might as well. It's easier to reference.
Okay, appreciate it, Alan. Okay, move on to item 8, our consent agenda. Look for a motion to approve a consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
Motion by Steve, second by Sherry. Steve?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
Teddy?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. Consent agenda is approved. Move on to item 9.1, discussion and consideration of proposed amendments to Title 10 of City Code. Mr. Malloy.
Okay, I'm not sure how to follow up that exciting budget presentation. But as we all know, that is such important work of the city that the city council does for us. Okay, this item that comes before you is another response to updates to state code. There's a requirement to identify more clearly what are the standards of review for conditional use applications. When this state amendment was passed, I reviewed our ordinance and compared it with a number of other cities and felt pretty good. We actually, our consultant that helped the city adopt the Title 10 that we currently function out of was in 2017. It was Neil Lindbergh, one of the better land use attorneys in the state. And he was a very good consultant for the city and really updated our code at that time. So we had some better standards than many other cities that I reviewed. But under Chase's encouragement, Planning Commission re-reviewed our standards. We consulted with Wilf Summercorn, who is very active with the Utah Leagues of Cities and Towns, their land use kind of consortium that watches, they're a watchdog group for land use items every year with the state legislature. He had recommended this kind of boilerplate language that other cities have been looking at adopting. It was prepared by John Jansen, who is a retired planning director from West Valley City. And our planning commission reviewed this language and felt really comfortable with it. In fact, I don't think they made any changes to the draft that was initially presented to them. We obviously put it in the context of our ordinance. They reviewed it, held a public hearing, voted on this, and recommended approval of the text amendment 6-0. I apologize, I didn't have a PowerPoint presentation for this. It's just all text. I didn't know how to really illustrate these concepts that easily.
I'm not
But,
disappointed to have
but that is the request before you is motion or a recommendation to adopt these newer standards for conditional use review.
Thank you, Michael. Any questions? Not, I'll look for a motion then.
Pretty straightforward.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 2022-13, amending Title 10 of the Harriman City Code regarding conditional use permit review standards.
Motion by Sherry,
I'll second.
second by Steve. Jared?
Yes.
Teddy?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. Thank you. Item 9.2, discussion and consideration of an amendment to Title 10 of City Code to allow internal accessory dwelling units as a permitted use. Mr. Malloy.
Again, I do have a short presentation on this. Again, this was a project that we worked on last year in response to updates to the state code. This particular bill instructed cities, mandated cities, that we needed to allow internal accessory dwelling units in areas that were primarily intended for single-family residential. And so when we analyzed that in our city, it was my recommendation to the city council, the planning commission and the city council, that we introduced that in R1 zones and agricultural zones. Our R2 zones do allow for some forms of attached housing. And so according to the state, we could exclude that because that was not the primary purpose or intent of the R2 zone, although we do have single-family homes in the R2 zones. After we adopted this new ordinance, we received a phone call or an inquiry from a resident who has a single-family home, is in an R2 zone, and it was his desire to petition the city to change this ordinance to allow for internal ADUs within R2 zones. However, it doesn't change any of the current standards that we require for internal accessory dwelling units in single-family homes. So again, the request to allow this in an R2 zone, we're not talking about allowing any type of attached housing. It still has to be a single-family home. It's just potentially allowed in an R2 zone. And you can see these R2 zones that we have mapped in the city. Now, one thing that staff had looked at is the possibility that the initial request was to allow it in an R210, but the consideration that the Planning Commission studied was looking at doing an R210 and R215. And so that was the motion from the Planning Commission, was to slightly expand what the resident had requested. That was the recommendation made by the Planning Commission. So this is just the simple text amendment introducing internal accessory dwelling units as a permitted use in the R210 and the R15. Again, just like the amendment that we passed last year, it is consistent with the goals and objectives of the city, especially, again, when it comes to our moderate income housing obligations. Interestingly enough, this year, the state is now requiring that we report how many ADUs we actually permit as a city every year. They want to know what our current inventory is. I had just an exchange of emails with Tammy just talking about how we might be able to track that and possibly look at a very small business license, an annual business license. We can certainly track building permits for accessory dwelling units, but that doesn't necessarily mean that 2 or 3 or 4 years down the road that they're still being operated as an accessory dwelling unit. If we have a business license that's renewed annually, just a minimal fee, we would know whether or not that homeowner is actually still using that space as an ADU or not. So that's something we
Which I
probably
think
ought to,
would be really valuable to
yeah,
track.
right,
For a lot of different
to
reasons.
track that data.
And that was mentioned at the state quite a bit, was a lot of people are going to
Yes.
that business license.
There's
Yeah.
probably 20% of my neighborhood's doing
Yep.
it. We have no idea.
So again, this is been recommended by the Planning Commission, 6-0. The applicant is here tonight, if you'd like to hear from him or answer. Yeah, I asked him earlier if he'd like to address you, and he said only if you had questions for him. But this is, again, a citizen-initiated petition that's before you tonight.
I think it's important to note also the restriction, right, to 6,000 square foot lot or higher, and the
It's still
the
single family.
requirement to have
the parking space.
still have to have extra
Yeah.
parking, all those considerations. So
Yeah, I don't see a lot change that would be a negative impact that haven't already addressed with the conditions on it, so. I don't
It's
have
the
a
same
problem with
ordinance
that.
as the R1, but just R2 if it fits that specific
Still
category.
this-
All the same criteria, right?
Yeah, it's just, yeah, it's fine.
Wow, you guys are on top of things
Yeah, I
tonight.
would agree with what the planning commission, I'd add them both.
Agreed.
Okay, sounds like we're all in agreement. I'll look for a motion then.
Your turn, Teddy.
That's 9-2, right? I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 2022-14, amending Title 10 of the Harriman City Code to allow internal auxiliary dwelling units in the R2 zones.
I'll second.
Motion by Teddy, second by Jared. Steve?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
Teddy?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. Thank you, and thank you to the resident. I will say that I love when residents initiate bring a concern like this and go through the process, so thank you for your bringing this to our attention.
I know it took longer than maybe you guys wanted to, but got it done.
So it's just about everything in municipal government.
Government.
Then, Michael,
Welcome to
I would
government.
recommend, Michael, maybe we do look at that business. I think we're all in agreement that we can look at a small, not to profit, but just to be able to keep track
Right,
and then
right,
help
just to
pay for the
track.
tracking.
Administrative fee,
Yep.
yeah. Okay.
Nothing that's detrimental, but help us.
Are you talking like a rental license? Is that what you're talking?
Right, right, for an
With an
ADU,
active ADU, it would require a small,
right,
yeah, that makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
Okay, we'll move on to item 9.3.
Pretty soon they'll be able to-
Discussion and consideration of a proposed amendment to Title 10 for digital sign regulations. Michael, again.
Thank you, and I will actually turn this presentation over to Sheldon Howa, our planner who's been working on this. I did also want to thank and acknowledge, and I think we should get a culture coin to John LaFollette. When he was reviewing this presentation, he noticed that our standards that we were reviewing and proposing did not really consider our own signs as a city. And that was the adjustment that we were trying to quickly make before the last meeting, and we removed it from the agenda. We've addressed all of John's concerns. We also, as you had requested, we've researched what the state standards are, and I know that Commissioner Oren asked for that. So I'll let Sheldon just talk with you about some of those adjustments we made to this proposal.
Cool.
Right, good evening. So I guess I'll kind of skip so the existing code, I guess the restrictions of the existing code, just it limits the possibility for business owners and property owners, well, particularly business owners, to place digital signs on their property. The biggest issue, I guess, is the setbacks. It's 500 feet from any residential use. And looking at these restrictions and applying these to like current areas we have where we have quite a bit of commercial development, that 500-foot setback really restricts any digital signs in any of those areas. So just kind of out of the response from our development partners and business owners, and then again, the city's, I guess, staff's desire to bring these standards up to more current practices, and to also bring some of our existing signs that are grandfathered and considered legal non-conforming will become conforming again as well. So what we're proposing to do is reduce the setbacks, and this setback reduction is going to be particular towards signs that are the digital display is 6 feet. Let's see, it's no taller than 6 feet above finished grade. So this is going to apply more towards just your monument signs. And what we're stating here is that so you're allowed to place a digital sign, digital display within 150 feet of a residential zone that's parallel to the face. Again, with that reduction of setbacks, we are recommending a greater restriction on luminacy of those signs. So currently, we allow 0.5 candle foot at the property line. This proposed amendment will drop that to 0.3, but it's actually going to be based off the sign size and a distance. So we're actually lessening the luminancy of the signs, and we're actually restricting the distance of that brightness, if that makes sense. We're actually, and again, we're just going to allow a little more flexibility in dwell times and transition times. So particularly on the signs here, the monument signs, you're going to see we're going to allow 8-second dwell times with a transition time of 3 seconds, and we're recommending that that transition be a fade-in, fade-out transition. Now, to address signage along Mountain View Corridor and some arterial roads, and this is maybe for some future developments that go in, and I think the city does have some future plans in place and some city entrance signs to the west. We're just opening up additional flexibility along those roadways and along Mountain View Corridor. And along those areas, we will allow digital display signs above 6 feet, but if they are above that 6 foot 6 foot height above finished grade, then they have to be 225 feet setback from residential dwellings. They are limited to 8-second dwell times, and transition times have to occur in less than 3 seconds. And this is consistent with the regulations that are set by the Outdoor Advertising Act that run along advertising corridors. Now I'd like to mention too, and as far as signage goes, what signs are allowed in the city, the tallest sign we actually allow is a planned, well, with the exception of wall signs, it's a planned unit sign, planned centered sign. And they're limited to 16 feet in height and 200 square feet. So this isn't gonna, you're not gonna see a bunch of like pylon signs popping up everywhere in the city. So this is an example of that 150-foot setback on like the monument signs. So an example, you have a residential zone that's adjacent to a commercial zone. They cannot place that sign within 150 feet of the property line of the property that that sign's placed on. We're not requiring any setbacks for any residential zones that are perpendicular to the face, and that's due to just because we're not going to get a lot of light trespass going in that direction. It's more directional, if that makes sense. Here's an explanation of kind of how we're going to measure that distance and how the distance, that brightness can, I guess, is allowed to go. And this is an example here of a monument sign, and this is the largest monument sign we allow in the city at this time at 64 square feet. Ordinance only allows 75% of that signage to be a digital display. And so we take the area of that display and we times it by 100 and take the square root, and that gives us a distance, which in this case would be 21 feet. So at 21 feet, that sign can be no brighter than 0.3 candle foot. I'm missing some text there. Okay, that just popped up. So, and this is just some clarification. These are some language modifications we made post Planning Commission's approval or recommendation, I'd say. And this is mainly just clarifying some of the language to make it a little more, I guess, understandable, to add clarification to the language. One section we did, this lower section here refers to electronic signs located within the Outdoor Advertising Act. We added that entirely, this whole section here, and that's just referencing the requirements of the Utah Outdoor Advertising Act. They do have additional restrictions, so if you're within 500 feet of an outdoor advertising corridor, there's certain regulations and licensing required by UDOT for you to place those signs. Under the Outdoor Advertising Act, there is provisions that do allow that if a digital display is located in an incorporated city, then the city can regulate the height and the size of those signs. So staff did review this, and we did find that it did meet the standards here in the zoning map and text amendment requirements. Planning Commission did give voted 6-0 to recommend approval. So if you have any questions for me.
Do you know how many other ordinances have square roots in the ordinance?
I don't, so, yeah, maybe the two other ones I looked at, but it just seemed pretty consistent with what other distances cities had. They had tables, and that just kind of fell in that area, so.
Sorry.
I gotta go
That's
take a math
okay.
refresher to
Yeah.
understand this code.
I struggled putting that into the staff report, like, how do you do this, but.
I love it.
Great work, Sheldon.
Thank you for including the comparisons to other cities. That helped a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for more clarification and bringing it back so we can have a little bit more time to noodle on it. Thanks.
Any questions or concerns or motion?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 2022-15, amending Title 10 of the Harriman City Code regarding electronic signs.
Motion by Sherry,
Second.
second by Teddy. Steve?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
Teddy?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. Thank you, Sheldon and Michael. Item 9.4, discussion and consideration of resolution amending the Harriman City Annexation Declaration Map. Jackie, we don't get to hear from you very often.
But we love it.
I'd like to be behind the scenes. So, Mayor and Council, a little bit of history on this. In 2011, the city had adopted the Annexation Declaration Map, and that boundary went all the way up to almost 102nd South. And at our meeting in March, it was discussed that we should reduce that boundary, the possible city boundary to south of 118 South. And so we've just revised that map to just basically draw a straight line 100 on 118 South and keep in the areas that's just in Salt Lake County as depicted in the original Annexation Declaration map. If the council would like to look at shrinking some of those other boundaries, we can do that. We would just need to know what delineating factors you would like to look at.
I would just say this came about from that West Bench general plan discussion where we even saw it today. I'll say it today. We saw Copperton. Nathan, you were on there with me. Copperton now shows in their intended annexation declaration the piece between Olympia and 118 South. Copperton just added that to their annexation declaration
Well,
just
I know
last week.
one of the things
popular.
that state code actually requires is for cities not to kind of incorporate the same in their annexation declaration in those same plans. So that might be something we would want to kind of work with them to see if either that could be removed from ours or theirs, or to kind of see if we can come up with a mutual agreement with all surrounding communities.
Yeah, that's going to become a political issue right now, honestly. So, yeah.
Interesting.
For me, this was about trying to say, put out there that we believe that 118th should be the border. And so, out of respect to our partners, I didn't want to show north of 118th, hoping they would show us the same respect.
Agreed.
So that's where.
I agree, but does that mean that we should just postpone this resolution until we have an opportunity to speak with Copperton? What would you recommend?
We can go either route. Our boundary map did include that area clear back till 2011. So
So they knew about it before they did
they
this.
should have known that that was already encumbered by another community.
Copperton did not. This is their first annexation declaration.
Correct. So you have three different communities, South Jordan, Copperton, us. And it's not the only spot on that map that the county has shown. There's nothing that prohibits cities from doing that.
No, it's
But-
just a recommendation.
Yeah, it doesn't, for us, really, if we were looking at where does it realistically make sense for us to provide utilities, you generally pick a boundary, and going all the way up to Copperton doesn't make sense for Harriman. I would also argue it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for any of those other cities to continue south when Harriman is here and can provide those resources. But this is really just us. I don't know that it goes, we'll send it to the county, but I don't know how enforceable it is. I don't know that it's terribly enforceable.
It's not even a requirement.
No, this is not a requirement.
I don't think the intent is to have something enforceable as much as it is to publicly declare to all of the other communities and entities around here what our intended boundary of the city is.
True, I don't think we have any intent to ever go north of 118th. So why have that on our
Why have it in
annexation?
there? Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Steve. I think it paints a clear picture, right? I mean, we have this ambiguous back in 2010, 2011, when we had that, like, wants, hopes, and dreams of anything out west, right? But now we see our clear boundary of 118, and it makes sense.
I agree.
Agreed.
Okay, I think we're okay then. I'll look for a motion then on it.
Motion to approve resolution number R12-2022, amending the annexation declaration map.
Motion by Steve,
Second?
second by Sherry. Jared,
Yes.
Teddy,
Yes.
Sherry,
Yes.
and Steve.
Yes.
And I'll vote yes as well. Okay, with that, future meetings. April 21st, Planning Commission meeting, 7 o'clock PM. April 27th, City Council work meeting, 5:30. General meeting at 7. Some upcoming events. Friday, look forward to this, the K-9 Memorial Dog Park opens after, a lot of people are anxiously waiting for that. April 18th, Hungry Harriman. April 21st, community fishing classes begin at Cove Pond, and April 25th, another Hungry Harriman event. Any other events?
So we forgot to recognize the amazing event we had downstairs earlier this morning. We had probably 100-plus senior citizens here that were doing bingo, and it was an amazing turnout.
That's so cool.
And it was fun to see. I stopped in for a few minutes just to witness the amazing. It just speaks to volumes about how our community wants events like this and how active they are, especially our senior community. We need space for them, so.
I still want to know what the answer was to who's the oldest resident. I heard Dayton asked who the oldest resident there was. I want to find out who that was.
Just to,
I think it was 91.
91.
by way of discussion, since you brought this up, is should the senior committee be part of this diversity inclusion thing that we're trying to do, or should it be included as part of its own subsidiary committee? I think that's something for us to discuss at a future meeting. So
I think it would fit. Okay, we can discuss that. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we need to go back to, we've got a brief, you've got like 2 minutes because, we're already, John, what was your time? You're under? You're 8:59? You're over? So Chief, you got, oh. So we need to go back into work meeting and then we do have a close tonight. We do have some closed items. So I'll look for motion, I don't know how to do this. I never know how to do this motion.
We're going to close first or work?
Work.
work first.
Okay.
So how do
I'll
we
make
go?
a motion to temporarily recess city council meeting to reconvene in a work session meeting.
Second?
Motion by Teddy, second by Sherry. Jared?
Yes.
Teddy?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. Okay, thank you, everybody.